anyone who's here for any reason other than this, if you want to come over, you're welcome. We're a friendly group over here. Don't be afraid of our friends who are carrying arms here. I know the media is telling you that there's somebody to be afraid of, but they're actually here to keep the peace and make sure everything goes down smooth. And we're just here to talk a little bit. I want to thank everybody who came out because I know this was a difficult weekend, a difficult week. It was very cold. My trip up here, we stayed in a hotel that had no power last night. I know a lot of people were much worse off, didn't have power all week or water. So it's been very frustrating. I know a lot of people weren't able to make it because of the weather. Ted Cruz, unfortunately, couldn't make it. He's in Cancun right now. But thank you guys so much for coming out. So the reason that we're here is insulin and healthcare in general. And the healthcare system, a lot of people know, is really, really broken. We've got a healthcare system that makes it absolutely unaffordable for some people to have access to basic needs. And the one thing that I'm bringing out here is a giant red flag of an example, which is insulin for diabetics. So diabetes, for those of you who don't know, your body normally naturally produces insulin. And when you get this disease, which 34 million Americans have, you're not able to produce insulin the way you normally would. And so what a lot of these diabetics do is they have to get this insulin and inject it in themselves. They have to monitor their blood sugar and they have to inject this insulin to save their lives. Now the problem is this insulin costs about $3 to manufacture a month's supply, and they sell it to us here in America for $100. Now, of course, if you live close enough to the border, you can actually walk right across the border over to Mexico, and you can buy the same insulin for $12, an 88% discount. Now, of course, if you don't live by the border, you have to pay these really high prices. If you're lucky enough to have insurance, well, your insurance isn't just coughing up that money for free. That's built into your premium. That's one of the reasons that the premiums are so high. Now, a lot of people say, oh, but if Mexico has insulin for $12, it must be some cheap knockoff stuff. No, actually, the stuff that they sell the insulin that they sell in Mexico is the exact same stuff that they sell in the United States. In fact, it was manufactured in the United States. It is FDA approved to be sold in the United States. But they export it to a place that cannot afford the $100 price tag that we have here. So I went down to Mexico, and in the United States you need a permit from the government, and that permit has to be given to you by a doctor. They call it a prescription. It's a government permit to get medication to save your own life. I went down to Mexico. I walked into a pharmacy, and I was a little bit scared because I was worried that what I was doing was illegal. I was going to try to buy some drugs and bring them back to the United States. Sounds scary, right? We've seen all these movies where people try to do that. The feds are after them. All this crazy stuff goes on. 100 years in prison. So I walked into a pharmacy, and man, I was like a teenager with a fake ID trying to buy alcohol. I went up to this pharmacist, and I was trying to speak broken Spanish to him. My Spanish is already not that great, but I was trying to make it worse just so he could be like, okay, this stupid gringo. Let's give him what he's asking for. And of course, that whole plan went south when I realized the pharmacist spoke perfect English, and he was just rolling his eyes at me. But it was funny because there was nothing odd about that to him. Because in Mexico, there's no requirement for government permission to get medication, or most medications, to keep you alive. This is super important. Because in the United States, there are people dying because they don't have access to life-saving medication. Sometimes because they don't have the right prescription, sometimes because they don't have the money to pay the extortion, the extremely high costs that our government imposes. So this stuff, you can go to Mexico, you can get it for $12, you can bring it across the United States. Sounds great. I was only able to bring a little bit with me because if I brought a whole lot of it, that might give me some problems. So some people reached out to me and they said, so what's your solution to this problem? I said, well, if you get rid of the government regulations, you might have somebody in in Mexico or another country who has access to this insulin for $12, who might open up an online pharmacy and send it to the United States for $12 plus shipping. Right now, that's illegal. It's not for your safety. The government wants to tell you it's for your safety. It's not for your safety. It is to protect the extortion from big pharma so they can charge you $100 for insulin that they're already selling in other countries for $12. Now, some people from the Democrat Party reached out to me and said, well, this is why we want to impose a price cap. They want to manipulate the market. That's no good. You start manipulating the market, then you have to manipulate the market on everything else. You have to come up with special rules. You have to come up with special prices. Companies start folding because they can't afford the regulations and all these other things. The price cap's too high, price cap's too low. The price will fall if you get rid of the government regulations. That's all you need to do. That's as simple as it is. But the Democrats won't push that narrative. Why not? They don't actually want to solve any problems. They don't want to solve any problems because as soon as the problems are solved, you'll stop voting for them. All they have is a carrot on a stick. They want you to say, oh, these Democrats, I've been voting for them for 200 years. They're gonna give me free health care at some point. They're gonna pay for my health care and I'm gonna get everything I need. It's not gonna happen. They're not really pushing for that. Joe Biden made these promises, all kinds of different promises. And as soon as he got into office, a full 180 and said, no, we're not going to do that. They're not there to help. That's why they refuse to acknowledge the fact that their policies and their bureaucracies are the reason that we're paying $100. We're paying extortion. And even if we had Medicare for all, what would that do? These companies would still get their $100. It's giving into extortion. We used to say in this country that we don't negotiate with terrorists. Well, that's exactly what these guys are doing. Oh, well, we'll just let their prices stay really high, but we'll steal from the rich because they have too much money. We'll steal from them to pay for things that we'd be able to afford if the government just weren't there in the first place. That's what they want. And when they say they're going to steal from the rich, what do they really end up doing? Stealing from you, everybody else. Why? Because the rich are the ones who write the laws and pass the laws. They're not going to tax themselves. Somebody else reached out to me and said, can you ship me some to Florida? And I said, sorry, I can't do that. For one, I have a very limited supply, and I don't know if it's going to make it because this stuff is very sensitive to temperatures. I asked more about the situation. This woman who reached out to me was a sex worker. She has a friend who just got dropped from her insurance plan and needs to come up with $2,500 to pay for the next few months of insulin. $2,500. That same amount, she's in Florida. She could fly to Cancun, right across from Florida, say hi to Ted Cruz, pick up $2,500 worth of insulin for less than $100 and fly back. And including the round trip ticket, she'd still be under $400. I offered her this suggestion, but she said, isn't that illegal? I want to talk about brainwashing for a minute because they've been brainwashing us since birth. We have to obey the law. We have to obey the law. Martin Luther King said, if a law is unjust, we not only have a right to ignore the law, we have a duty. This law is unjust. It is telling us that even though we can buy life-saving medication for what we can actually afford, it's illegal. And so many Americans have fallen for this brainwashing that they are afraid to save their own lives. Now, I want to go back to some really important point. I said this woman was a sex worker. Sex work, even though it's illegal in most states, there's always little ways around it. And they do it with different language by saying, oh, we're not actually doing this, we're doing something else. It's still, by the government, considered illegal. This was a person who was happy to engage in this illegal act because she was able to dance around the words and say, oh, well, it's technically not illegal. But she she's afraid of breaking an even more minor law to save her friend's life. This is tragic. Isn't this a free country? Supposed to be. Now, one thing I want to talk about is, a lot of you know I'm running for governor of Texas, and we're here at the Texas State Capitol. And a lot of this is federal law. So what can the state do if this is federal law?
Ignore it.
We can ignore it. We can nullify it. I mean, if we wanted to, we could build our own bridge across the Rio Grande and allow cars to drive right over with it. We could send helicopters and allow state protection against federal agents. We have the power to do that. Now, a lot of people don't like that idea. But do you like the idea that people are going to die because they don't have access to health care? Something else. These states need to grow a backbone and start pushing back against the feds. There are so many federal regulations that are denying access to health care and so many other rights. And these states don't want to push back. Why? Because we have cowards. We have cowards running our state governments who are happy to profit off the same extortion that the federal government is using against us. In fact, one of the things that a lot of states do is they impose a state income tax. A lot of people don't know this. The income tax is actually unconstitutional for a lot of people. But being the smart geniuses that these people in Congress are, they wrote a law that didn't apply to most people, so it wouldn't be unconstitutional. Then they just convinced everybody that it applied to them. Now they've got you all paying federal income tax. The states came along, started with no states, then there was one, then there was two, then 10, then 20. Now almost all of them, except for about 7, have an income tax. But they don't have their own income tax. They have a piggyback income tax. It's built on the federal income tax. This federal income tax means when you earn your money in Texas, some of that money is going to be taken away from you, sent to the federal government that is denying your ability to have access to life-saving medication, when you could keep that money for yourself and use it to buy the medication you need to survive. And they'll tell you you're a tax cheat. They'll tell you you're a criminal. If you try to save that money for yourself and save your life, or if you try to save that money for yourself and save it so when a rainy day comes along and the government shuts down the entire economy for something like COVID, and you don't have a job, you have some money saved. But they don't want that. They want you to be in perpetual debt. Perpetual debt so they can have complete control over you. Oh, you paid off your house, but you missed a payment on your property tax? Sorry, you're homeless. Debt slaves, exactly. I want to talk about something else that I have some friends out in Africa, in Uganda. And one of them reached out to me and said, hey, we have this little girl here. She's 8 years old and she needs a heart transplant. Can you help us raise money? The first thought that jumped into my head was, oh my God, that's going to be expensive. How are we ever going to raise that much money? I asked him, how much do you need? $15,000 for a heart transplant. I said, that sounds way too low. Is there a heart available? Yes, there's a heart available. So I hop on the internet, I hop on DuckDuckGo and do a quick search. How much does a heart transplant cost in the United States? On average, it costs $1 million. $1 million. That's a lot of money. How is it that the exact same operation can cost $1 million in one country and $15,000 in another country? Well, are they paying the surgeons $100,000 an hour? No, that's not it. Well, Okay, let's go back to this question about, okay, but we're talking about Uganda. They can't really have great healthcare out there. This really can't be a surgeon with a lot of skill. No, actually that $15,000 includes an airlift to India where they have great doctors. $15,000 to transport somebody from Uganda with a heart condition to get them heart surgery and a new heart. It's incredible. So why is the United States so much more expensive? Government and their regulations. We actually have doctors here from other countries who are unable to practice medicine because the government says they can't. Here in Texas, we had a lot of water pipes burst over this cold storm over the last week. So we need a lot of plumbers. There's a lot of people out there who can fix these pipes, but the government says only if you have a license. It's the same thing as healthcare. So what did the government do? They said, oh, well, it's a state of emergency. We're going to allow people who have licenses from other states and people who have expired licenses in Texas, we'll allow them to fix some of these leaky pipes. Anybody else still out of the question? If you know how to fix your pipes and you want to fix your neighbor's pipes, that's illegal. You can go to jail for that. And it's the same with doctors. There are doctors who are absolutely qualified. They're fully trained. They might have been trained in other countries. They might have been trained here in the United States. We have medical boards who say, we're sorry, we have too many doctors. You're not allowed to practice. Can you believe that? Does that even make sense in America that a doctor who is fully trained and qualified to give basic care is unable to because of some bureaucrats? And this is how they inflate the price. So I brought some insulin with me, and if anybody here is a diabetic, I want to make the offer that you can have some of this insulin for the same price that I was able to get it in Mexico. And whatever I have left, actually some of my friends here from the, what should I say? The boys with the guns. They actually brought some food and water for the homeless. So we're gonna head out and we're gonna distribute that after this. And when we do that, if we run into any diabetics who are homeless and are in need, we will give them access for free. We're not gonna charge them to any leftovers that we have here. But of course, I'm not one of these politicians who likes to walk around and just give everybody an earful. I want to hear what you have to say. So if you have any questions, I want to answer them for everybody to hear. Does anybody have any questions?
Any ideas we can spread this type of operation and network with people so we can see more of this type of stuff?
Absolutely. So the question is, how can we get this information out to more people? If you want to head over to my website, danforfreedom.com, there's a form there where you can sign up and give me your information so we can stay in contact, or I can take your information right here. And we are working on building a massive network to get this information out, because here's something very interesting. Channel 7 News of Austin is 2 blocks over that way. They're not going to come here and cover this. Oh, there goes Alex Jones.
Is that really Alex Jones?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Alex Jones.
What's up, Alex? So Channel 7 News is not going to come here and cover this. Why? Because all these media stations, if you watch TV long enough, you will see hundreds and hundreds of ads for pharmaceuticals. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and if they have to cut their prices on insulin from $100 to $12, they're going to lose tens of billions of dollars every year. That's a lot of money. And if the media covers this, all they have to do is say, hey, you know what? You guys aren't on our side. We're pulling all of our advertising and putting it on a different channel. This is our free media. This is how it works. Does he just do this every day?
Is this a normal? Hey, Austonians, is this normal? This is normal?
They're giving parking tickets?
No, chicken restaurants.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
All right, anybody else have any questions? Now's the time, boys.
I got one. If you do get elected as governor, what's your what's your feeling over I guess federal gun laws? Like, how do you feel about federal gun laws overall?
The question is, how do I feel about federal gun laws, and what would I do if I'm elected as governor? Well, we don't work for the feds, so we're not going to enforce them. And in fact, we're going to protect people who want to exercise their constitutional rights. You know, it's funny. We were walking onto the grounds over here. We were going to do this on the inside of the fence. I thought they were going to say something about the guns. My friend over here is holding a taxation is theft flag, and they objected to the flag. You're not allowed to bring the flag onto the Capitol grounds. I said, really? And he said, yeah, it's the pole. Oh, so it's the pole that offends you. He said, yeah, you can't bring anything more than 12 inches. That was awfully suggestive. I said, can we shorten the pole so that it's the length of the flag? Nope. Because these laws make absolute sense. It's nuts.
You sure that's a law and he just didn't make it up?
He probably made it up.
Just made it up.
Yeah,
but hey,
I
more
kinda
people
want to know what number law that is.
Right.
Yeah.
But hey, more people can hear us from here. So yes, we will protect people's constitutional Second Amendment rights. We will nullify all of those laws. We will bring constitutional carry to Texas.
Woo.
And any federal agent caught enforcing a law that is illegal to enforce in Texas will be arrested.
Woo!
Yeah.
Here we go. I know you got one, man. You've been over there thinking for a minute.
It's been a long couple days. Hard to think.
All right.
I got one for you. What is the plan to do about the homeless?
The homeless, very good question. So, on my platform for governor, I have this plan called Rent Free Texas. And one of the things that I want to do, this isn't the socialist, oh yeah, we're going to cancel rent. This is even better. You're not going to get free rent. You're going to own the place you live in. And we need to do this. We need to teach people to be financially responsible, but it's possible. I used to rent. I own a home now. All it takes is a little bit of education. They didn't teach us any of this stuff. Any of the stuff I had to learn to be able to make that change, they didn't teach me any of that in school. They don't want us to learn that, but it's very possible. And of course, there are 4 things in the way that the government does to prevent us from owning homes. Now, I know you asked about the homeless. I'll get to that in a second. But these 4 things affect both renters and the homeless. Property tax is number 1. You own your home and you paid for it outright. You miss a couple payments to the government, you're homeless. If you have a job and you're earning money and you want to save some of it, you can't, because the government is taking their cut. Income tax. And in Texas, we had a proposed bill to make a constitutional amendment forbidding an income tax in Texas. And I know it's a little bit more dangerous right now because we've got a lot of Californians coming out here who think they want to turn the state blue. Yeah. We need to make sure there's a constitutional amendment so that can't happen. We need to fortify Texas against these types of restrictions. And you look at the homelessness in California, It is off the charts. And it's because of all of the taxes and oppression that their government puts down on their people. The FHA, this is another federal law that we have to push back against, but the FHA, a lot of people think the FHA is great. It makes it so easy for me to buy a new house. That's not what the FHA does. The FHA makes it very easy for you to pick up 30 years worth of debt. That's all they do. Before the FHA was around, the cost to buy a house would take 2 or 3 years' salary. 2 or 3 years of your salary and you would own your house. Now it's closer to 8. This is because of the FHA. And all this is a banking scheme where they back loans that the banks wouldn't even back.
How we need the Fed to come in and run the Texas power when it was the Fed and the globalists and Agenda 21.
I have to agree with him on that.
Yeah, well, I'm starting to really like these.
Yeah,
when he puts speaking in sound bites and filtered, sometimes
But here we have the smoking
I'm going to let him drive by.
The smoking gun that the Fed wouldn't let Texas turn the power on. Incredible information, ladies and gentlemen. One of the biggest swindles is energy. And Texas had better government before this and protected it somewhat from it. But that's not happened now because we're under Agenda 21 and under Agenda 2030. And we have the Department of Energy document order number 202-21-1 with the state of Texas begging the federal government ahead of the storm to let them increase output. And the whole media knows this, and they're hoping this doesn't get out. The power outages, the virus hoax, the lockdowns, all of it is about breaking America's will. Stop wearing the mask. Learn that almost all the death is other things. Biden says the mask is never coming off. We're abusing our children. We're doing all of this evil, getting bacterial pneumonia from the mask, and they're never coming off. It's a symbol of how humans are dirty and humans are bad for depopulation. That's all this is. And that's why we're here, ladies and gentlemen, exposing all of this because it's so important to expose the Great Reset. Take off your license plate. It's not government property.
Oh, what a character.
Oh, that really bugs me. What's funny is the first time I saw Alex Jones was when I was just waking up. And I saw some videos where he went to the DMV in Texas and demanded that they give him a driver's license without his thumbprint. They just started requiring a thumbprint and he didn't want to give it. And he got arrested. This was like on VHS. It was insane.
The vaccine they're giving you here is banned in India. It's not been tested on animals, and in human open trials here, it's killing a lot of people. Ladies and gentlemen, everything is the Great Reset. Everything is the Great Reset that is Operation Lockstep. If you love your family, if you love your freedom, look into Operation Lockstep now. Look into Bill Gates' plan and look into the globalist operation. It is absolutely critical that everyone understand that. Operation Lockstep.
He's doing his best. You gotta admire him.
As much crazy as he puts on it, a lot of the stuff that he says is absolutely true. Absolutely true.
You were talking about
Yes. Where was I? So a lot of these laws are forcing people into debt, and of course, when you're in debt, it makes it very difficult to keep a roof over your head. I mean, if you get evicted because you can't make your rent, that makes it hard to find a place that's going to rent to you. Why would they rent to you? You didn't make your payments last time. You're a bad person now. You can't even rent if you have a job. The war on drugs has given people felony records, preventing them from having jobs.
Victimless crimes.
Victimless crimes. I don't even like to call them victimless crimes because they're not crimes. They're just victimless. Anything that's victimless should not be a crime or is not a crime. But there are so many things, and one of the things that I want to do, because I want to end the drug war, is I want to make sure that anybody who is in jail in Texas is released, and I want full expungement for all non-violent drug-related crimes. In fact, all non-violent crimes. I've met so many great people. I've had felons work on my campaigns over the years. They are amazing people. They are dedicated. They are hardworking. And they can't get jobs because they have a felony record. And I know a lot of them were falsely accused. In fact, we look at what the Innocence Project is doing, and they've been working to get hundreds of people out of prison who have been convicted falsely of all kinds of horrible crimes. But they get the wrong person. Because these prosecutors don't care, they just want a win. They want to win. They do plea bargains. They get somebody who knows they can't hire an attorney. They don't care if they even have the right guy. They just say, you know what, you can't afford an attorney. If we take this to trial, you're going to prison for a very long time. You might as well just confess. And innocent people confess because they want to see their family in 10 years instead of 20. The way the government works is criminal. We need to stop all of this. And I might not have all of the answers right now, but I know a lot of these answers are the big ones that will get us in the right direction. And once we get there, we can reevaluate and see what else is needed to be done. But these are absolutely some of the first steps we need to take. Good?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That answers me.
All right.
I'd like to thanks for pointing out the war on drugs part too. I've been charged with a victimless crime before, and it damn near cost me my whole life.
Something else about the war on drugs too is it may be illegal to bring insulin across the border and sell it to people, but you won't find a single person who's looking for insulin to get a fix, to get a high. But it's still illegal. There's no abuse. You go across to Mexico, anybody can walk into a pharmacy for $12 and buy a pen of insulin. They don't have an abuse problem over there. In fact, a lot of drugs here in the United States that require prescriptions are available in Mexico without a prescription, and you don't have people abusing these drugs. It doesn't happen. And all these crazy drugs that they come up with in the United States that people start making out of common household items, these cocktails, that only happens in places where things like cannabis are illegal. Supply and demand. You have access to all kinds of chemicals in the kitchen, but you don't have access to cannabis. People want to get high. They're going to start looking at alternatives. We have to end the war on drugs.
Somebody in the live feed said that they've got a question. So Bitcoin, if you want to type up your question, I'm sure you'd be happy to answer it.
Is that Bitcoin kid? Type in your question. He's an awesome guy. He's always on the live stream. In just a minute here, guys, if you need insulin, or if you're interested in helping out my campaign, I've got hats and t-shirts and all flags and all kinds of other cool stuff.
I got another question. With a lot of these prescription drugs that people rely on that aren't really able to be used recreationally at all, like insulin, for instance, if you did have the means to reproduce them, if you were some millionaire and you wanted to go set up your laboratory and do the same exact recipes that these other pharmaceutical companies use, intellectual property laws stop people from reproducing these products. So do you think that intellectual property laws should be really applying to these pharmaceuticals and drugs the same way they were applied to, say, a fiction story or something like that?
Yeah. Okay, so this is a great question about drug manufacturing and intellectual property laws. And I want to point something else out first. So we have basic laws of supply and demand. If more people are making something, there's more competition, there's more incentive for people to come up with something better, and there's always lower prices. Because if I were able to produce insulin right now, which by the way, I'm already doing, this is what everybody's body does naturally. So I don't know if the government wants to come and arrest me for manufacturing insulin. But the more companies you have that are able to produce and bring it to market, the lower the prices we see. And that's why you see things like aspirin and Tylenol. And of course, these were all legal before the FDA started really restricting laws. But you look at the cost of these things, and they're ridiculously inexpensive. Every pharmacy you go to has a generic version of these things, and they're ridiculously inexpensive. Anybody can make them. But what's interesting with insulin is there are only 3 companies that are allowed to sell insulin in the United States, and there are 47 companies that manufacture it worldwide. So 44 companies are not able to sell their insulin here. Why? Because it costs them $1 billion or something crazy like that to get past the FDA. And if they could probably sell it for $50. That would still be half price. But the other insulin companies don't want that. Now, they use intellectual property laws for the same reason, to prevent that competition. They don't want to have to lower their prices. And what's interesting about this is, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an inventor. And I was sold on intellectual property laws because I knew I didn't have $1 million. I'd never be able to make a factory. But all these ideas I was coming up with, I wanted to be able to take them. You know, this is the big inventor story. You take your idea, you sell it to a big company, and they give you money for it. They go make it. That's what I wanted to do when I was a kid. And I liked the patent laws because that meant no one was able to steal my idea. But here's the thing. You don't need intellectual property laws to protect your ideas. If I came up with something and I wanted to take it to a company, all I have to do is make them sign a contract saying that they're not going to steal my idea. And if they sign that contract and steal my idea, then they owe me money. But once it gets to market, once it's public, once people know what it is, once people are able to reverse engineer it, it's just information, it's just knowledge. That's all it is. And when you have government coming in to protect things like this, and I like to use the movie industry as an example. Sure, you can make a contract that if you buy a movie on DVD and you take it home, you're not allowed to copy it, and you agree to that contract when you buy the disc. Copyright problem solved. But what do? They're not going to go around suing individual people. Instead, what they do is they have the government as their private security force. They steal from you and me so that they have a national force, international force even, to go around putting people in prison for making copies of their DVDs. We are subsidizing the movie industry to protect their own intellectual property because they know they can't do it themselves.
Oh, no. Bitcoin's question is typed in. He said, what are your plans for the education system, particularly college?
The education system. What are my plans, especially college? We need to recognize that a lot of the education you get from college is something you can learn on your own, at a library, or even on your smartphone. All this information is available online. And what these universities are doing is, one, they're price gouging everybody, and they're able to do that because the government is backing up these ridiculous loans, right? No bank is going to give you $50,000 to go to college. They can't repossess your certificate once you graduate. That's a stupid investment. If you never go on and get a good job, you're never able to pay that back. But the government has given them special protections. And with those special protections, they have dumped billions of dollars onto the education market, which of course has inflated prices. And they do it for any education that has absolutely no career path or any way that you can ever make money to repay it. But they don't care because they know the government is going to allow them to follow you beyond the grave to collect that money. Yes, you can't file bankruptcy on these student loans, and sometimes they'll even pass it and make your kids pay for it. It's terrible. We need to stop focusing on this. There are trade schools that cost far less, and you can make far more money this way. When we talk about law school and medical school as being some of the most expensive courses you can take, most of that's bookwork. Like, I get it. You need some hands-on training to become a doctor. But a lot of it is book work. You don't need to pay $10,000 a semester to read a book. All these courses you should be able to take them at home for a very low cost. And then you go to the college when you need to do the in-person stuff. And we need to get rid of the government regulations that are preventing more people from teaching. Yes, they have an actual cap on the number of people who are able to teach particular fields, federal regulations. And they have an actual cap on the number of people who can graduate, regardless of how good their grades are. This is our system at work. It's an artificial limit of supply, and they're doing this to keep prices up.
Was stolen. In the great weekend, take the mask off.
All right, guys, thank you so much for coming out. It's been great talking to you, and stick around.
There is one question on here if you got a second.
Question.
Yeah, it's let me, I don't want to get the picture messed up, so I'll just show it so I can read it there. All right. What do you see we can do as far as the price is that gouging of utilities after disasters happen in our community, like New Orleans after a hurricane or Texas now this week?
That's exactly what my good friend Alex is talking about over here.
We know from the Department of Energy documents that we have massive amounts of power and aren't allowed to turn these plants off without getting federal funds. And so that's why
Screw the feds!
There used to be the biggest power producer in the country, didn't have enough power was because of these regulations. The Department of Energy order number 202-21-1 has all of it in it. And we have direct links to it at Infowars.com and Newswars.com. So wherever you do, go read about this order with the governor 3-4 days before begging the Department of Energy to let Texas please turn up our power plants. And they made us wait till the grid went down to do it so they could have their cake and eat it too. They let it totally go down, they would have got the money. So instead they waited till it started to go down and said, okay, now you can. Since when does the out-of-control leftist federal government run the power system of Texas or anywhere else in this country? Learn about Agenda 2030. Learn about the Great Reset. Learn about the New World Order. And speak out and warn others. The Great Reset for world.
That was perfect timing. He answered the question for me. He's absolutely right. A lot of people think, because of what the media has been saying, they think that the energy system in Texas is unregulated.
Yeah, and you think it's a fucking joke. It's not a game, dude.
Yeah. So, if the energy in Texas is so unregulated, does that mean anybody can just build a nuclear power plant? The government's not going to get in their way? I don't see that happening.
I've seen it happen before, actually. Someone's built a nuclear power plant in their garage and their door got kicked in within 40 minutes of them turning it on.
There you go, 40 minutes. This is not unregulated at all. This is what the people who want more regulation want you to believe. They want you to believe that there weren't enough regulations and that's why the power went out. No, there are plenty of regulations. There are regulations preventing more investors from entering a market that has lots and lots of money to be made. They prevent them from entering this market and building new power plants. And then once they're built, they prevent them from producing too much power. This is highly regulated. It's a protected cartel, an energy cartel. And we need to get rid of this. We need to have more solutions to create more power in Texas. And we don't need to do anything to make it happen, except for getting government out of the way. Elon Musk just moved to Texas. That guy likes making energy. I guarantee you, if you get the government out of the way, he's going to build some crazy underground, ridiculous energy producing thing. because that's what he does. But he can't do it without permission from the government. And he's not going to get that permission when all these oil and gas companies are standing in his way. All right, thank you guys for coming out. If you need insulin, if you're diabetic, if you need insulin, I have insulin here. This is part of my free healthcare plan. Free is not free as in zero cost of acquisition. It is not stealing from somebody to pay for this for you. This is free as in freedom. If somebody knows and understands medicine and you want to talk to them about your own health care, you have a right to talk to that person. The government does not have the right to get in your way and tell you that because this person didn't pay the extortion to the state, they're not allowed to talk to you about medicine. That's why we're here today. So thank you guys so much for coming.
White car.
Yes.
I've experienced in All
right.
That's not true out. I have experience. It's not like I was even walking.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Like as far as on the American political scale, I'm libertarian, but
Yeah, that's my old card. But if you go to that site, that's where to contact me. Or find me on Twitter or whatever.
Okay,
send me a message. Or if you want to write down my number, I'll. Here,
he was about to save the day.